Hi, I'm Rhianna Patrick and we're celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Black and Write project. You're going to meet some of the fellows who've been a part of this amazing program. Alison, tell me about your story. Tell me the how, why and where you wrote this.
There's a bunch of poems that I was working on, principally to just kind of work through these questions that I was having about how I situated myself as a queer First Nations woman in the world, and how I kind of came to begin to understand these two parts of myself, which I initially thought were quite distinct, actually see them become intertwined, complicate each other, come together and have a relationship that kind of sits outside the white gaze.
So My Father's Shadow is a young adult thriller, and I first wrote it as part of National Novel Writing Month. Then I kind of did a few edits before submitting it to the Black and Write Fellowship.
I wrote Terra Nullius in my caravan. I had come up with the idea while passing through my ancestral country in South Coast WA, and I was told the story of the massacre in my country. And after hearing that story, I just had to write a book, and Terra Nullius just came to me.
I had this idea when I was catching waves about a teenage Indigenous surfer who I named Kira after, where I got the idea. And she caught a barrel and time-slipped into a land before European influence, only to discover her unwanted dreaming gift is the only thing that can save us all.
The story that came out through my fingers onto the page was a dreaming of who I am, who I want to be, where I'm from, where I want to go, the people that shaped me.
Ruby Moonlight was a story that came from massacre. I was working with Indigenous youth literacy programs and travelling quite broadly across the country, and every place has a massacre story.
Washville actually came out of I was really missing my nieces and nephews, so I sent them a handwritten letter and the first chapter of a book that's all about them, and they're literally the two main characters, and to get the next chapter they had to write me back.
I wrote it because at the time I was kind of concerned about people starting to access Aboriginal plant knowledge, and the other thing is I saw like elders being pretty critical of young fellas getting into hip hop and stuff like this. So how do we connect young people to our cultures, really? So that was the motivation for writing the book.
Janali, I'm interested in knowing what you read growing up. You know, you've written this thriller. Was that what you were into when you were younger?
No, not at all. I only got into the sort of thriller genre and more sort of realist, sort of slice of life kind of books as an adult. When I was young, I was all about speculative fiction.
I was a big young adult fiction fan growing up, and I was also a big poetry fan. My mum used to read to me Audrey Nunakal's Son of Mine a lot.
Books were the most important thing in my life when I was younger. I grew up reading science fiction and fantasy mostly because that's what I liked.
In my late teens, I started to read more works that featured the experiences of colonised people in other countries. And then later, I guess, but still, I was a teenager reading like Jack Davis and Roger Bennett, so Aboriginal playwrights, and starting to read Oodgeroo.
I was a definite fantasy geek. I think partly because Mum was always reading us things like, Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe and things like that.
I guess for me growing up, there were never Indigenous novels in our English classes. I knew of no Indigenous authors for that style of writing.
Listra, what reaction did you have when you found out that you had won a Black and Write Fellowship?
Well,
To be quite honest, I let it go to Messenger. And then, I let it go to Messenger. And then I phoned my husband. I'm like, Black and White have left me a message and I have to ring them back. And he's like, well, ring them back. I'm like, I was just so nervous and shaky. And I did not expect to win.
Well, it was a profoundly powerful experience for me, because I've been told that it's really hard to become a writer, and particularly for women of colour. So I thought, this is never going to happen. There's no chance anyone would publish that book. And then I got that call and found out it was going to be published and that there was a prize involved. I have to say, it was that the opportunity to be published was worth more to me than the kind of the assistance of the money, even though the money helped start to get my car fixed.
Not a lot. Just a lot of shocks and excitement and, stoked.
I was driving and my partner George answered up and said, oh, sorry, Nadi can't speak at the moment, she's driving. And I think they said, well, she might actually want to take this call. I mean, it's wonderful news. It's almost overwhelming. You don't know what to do with it.
I remember being very overwhelmed because it was the inaugural Black and Write. And maybe in that moment, I knew that my writing would always be more public than private.
I guess once you had this manuscript, what was it like then to work with an Aboriginal editor in shaping that and shaping the story that we've come to know?
Well, it's always fun to work with your mob and take a little sidestep out of the mainstream.
Yeah, it was great, and it was really important to do that work and just to have that trust.
The editing process is exhausting for everyone, but it's especially exhausting when you don't share a common cultural background, the same sort of worldview and framework. And, we're all from different nations and we all have different cultures, of course, but there's that base understanding and that common experience.
I think it's such a privilege to work with someone who understands cultural protocols, and that's such an important part of story writing.
I thought I was leaving the musical side of me behind and moving into a writing part of me. And it wasn't until sort of halfway through the process of Black and Write, I'll never actually forget this day. Grace said to me, I was struggling a little bit with, the nuts and bolts of getting the right words and the right feelings. And she said, what if I said to you, where's the music in this passage?
What do you think, been the flow-on effect of winning a Black and White fellowship? Apart from having your book out in the world, what else have you discovered that has come your way?
Black and White made me realise, before a word had been printed, that the story that I made belonged somewhere. And so it didn't matter how many shelves had a book on it. It didn't matter how many people bought it or who read it or who knew it. It belonged somewhere.
For me, it still is surreal, this recognition of writing on a national and international scale.
Since winning Black and White, I'm now a full-time author, making not a large living, but enough to live on for my writing.
It's definitely opened a lot of doors. And I think that, once you get over that first hurdle of publishing your first book, it kind of gives you a little bit of cred, that you're a serious writer, because there's so many people who have met along the way of when I was, honing my craft and learning and doing lots of courses and that sort of thing.
Being able to share stories and to do it in your own way, in your own voice, in your own style, that comes with confidence. And confidence comes by having the right team around you, the right connections, who are like having Indigenous writers, having other Indigenous editors, being to talk through those processes. But winning an award like this, having the Black and White award, just opened up all of those doors.
It wasn't that long ago that I won Black and White. And so I've had, these other publications since that point. It definitely gave me that exposure to Australian writing festivals and audiences. So, yeah, it was a real turning point.
Being contracted to work with a massive, one of the big 5 publishing houses, yeah, that was a bit of a shock. It's definitely been a strange and wonderful experience.
So what do you think the place is of something like Black and Write? You know, why is it important to have this in a space, and particularly for you being on the other side and coming from a publishing background?
So many amazing editors that have come out of that program. And I also think so much more awareness as a result. It's 100% contributed to this change that we're seeing in the publishing industry now, where editors and publishers are now more aware of the need to undertake these protocols.
It's critical because it's one of the things that it's doing. It's not only developing writers, but it's developing editors.
It's foundational to understanding who we all are. And because it works differently and it focuses an idea of success or professionalism or industry in different ways.
I don't think I'll be alone in saying that I've had a meteoric rise as a writer, from nothing to relative success in the Australian writing landscape very quickly. And I honestly do not believe that would have happened without the Black and White Prize.
It was great to work with the Black and Write team, and also with Mugabala. And I really think that through the process, the book evolved so much. It really changed, but it's I think the best that it could be.
This kind of enormous blossoming of our literature over the last 5 years has only been able to take place because of the huge amount of precedent of work that's been done beforehand, including the work that's been done by Black and Write. Really just cannot sing its praises enough, obviously.
Love yous. Happy birthday. Woo!